Springfield's Talk 1041. Hey, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to the show. Hope you're doing well. Oh, rainy day yesterday, rainy day today. Then sunshine, warmer temps to come. A look at that first alert forecast Friday. We'll be here before you know it, and we will be having a happy hour this Friday at Retro Metro 4 to 6. Love for you to join us. Great way to kick off the weekend, have a good time, hang out, have some drinks, have some food. Generally speaking, they have a number of different happy hour options during that period of time. A lot of times half-price draws and maybe wine selections, and I think that they do change it up every so often. And if you haven't had lunch at Retro Metro, it is a great place to have lunch. It's a great step up from a lot of your traditional lunch places. You just want something a little special. You have somebody coming in town. You want to showcase the local flair of food that we do have available here, because we got a lot of restaurants here. Sometimes you want something a little nicer, a little, customized, if you will. And Retro Metro is a great place for that. Of course, they have dinner. I talk a lot about lunch because we do our lunch bunch there, and you can sign up to win lunch bunch at ksgf.com. And if you win, then you and 5 folks of your choosing will join us for lunch on a Wednesday at Retro Metro. Well, another 24 hours have gone by, and it's another 24 hours of heels being dug in. Those who thought perhaps the drumbeat of Biden needs to drop out, that would lead to the erosion of resolve from the Biden needs to stay in camp, have been mistaken, at least up until this point. Joe Biden, yesterday morning, on Morning Joe, will play some of this audio, calling in, doing the angry old man yelling thing, and you just got to love it. It's not at Trump or MAGA Republicans. It's the elites in the Democrat Party. Oh, the elites who think that they know better than him. Isn't this just a glorious time to watch? I can't help but wonder. It's got to be a very difficult and emotionally confusing position to be in if you're a Democrat who simply takes the marching orders, if you will. Democrats are generally in unison, but for these moments that come along like a solar eclipse, very specific election cycles in which Democrats aim their weapons at one another. Generally, in unison, however, the good and evil is very stark. Democrats are good, Republicans are evil, and that's it makes for a very simple life if you are a devout supporter of the Democrat Party. You're told here's what to believe, and that's it. You don't need to know anything else. You don't need to explore any other information. You don't need to fact check anything. They do it all for you. Oh, here's what this evil Republican said. We fact checked it, and they lied because they're evil. Oh, it's just this warm blanket they have. And it is similar to being in a cult in which you've got the cult leader, one unified, one voice, and they just tell you, here's the way it is, and it is because they told you so, right? But imagine you're in a cult, and all of a sudden, within the cult, some of the elders began demanding that the cult leader step down, but some of the other elders demand that no, the cult leader stays in. And then there's all sorts of fighting amongst the elders, whom amongst them will take the place of the cult leader if he is forced to step down. And if you are someone who is accustomed to a unified message, just telling you the very simple good versus evil, Republicans, Trump supporters, patriots, bad, evil, Democrat Party, Joe Biden, good, media, mainstream media, good. And now you're getting all of these mixed signals. It can be very confusing, and I don't know what goes on in the mind of a person who is in that position. Do they just tune it out? And it may vary from person to person. I suspect for a lot it would be like a child who is dealing with their parents fighting. And as a child, that is something that you can't really necessarily comprehend because your parents are these infallible creatures. And so when there's that conflict, it's very emotionally bothersome. And oftentimes you just shut it out. You go and you hide in the closet. You put your hands over your ears. You hide under the bed. You don't want to hear it because it's very confusing to you. And I suspect for a lot of Democrat voters, that's what they're facing right now. Must be a very difficult time. Now, you'll get over it if you happen to be one of those individuals. At some point, you'll be back in that comfortable, warm, cozy blanket of Republicans are all evil, Democrats are all good. This is just a rough patch that you're going through. And you'll get through it. Now, what it looks like on the other side, still yet to be seen. You've got former Clinton pollster Mark Penn saying Biden is in this thing. I've got bits of audio on both sides of this, and when I say both sides, they're all within the Democrat Party. Mark Penn saying it would be an absolute disaster to try and, at this point, switch Biden out. Then you have David Axelrod, former advisor to Obama, saying that he's got to go. If Biden stays in this thing, Trump is going to win by a landslide. You have differing opinions here as to which route is the route to success. Notice none of what they speak of is in the context of what is the right thing to do. None of what they speak of is in the context of what is best for ultimately the country, what is true, honorable, what is best for Joe Biden as a human being. It's all in the context of power. The only way for us to win, us, not the country, but us, the Democrat Party, to win, is for Joe Biden to stay in this thing. No. The only way for us to win is for Joe Biden to be replaced. All in the context of power. And when you look at the person whose shoulders this civil war is balancing upon, and is Joe Biden. Of all the people, it's like fighting over the ugliest girl in school. Like, really? This is what you're fighting? This is what the great turmoil within your own party is over? Joe Biden? Not a battle between two amazing contenders, either of which could easily find a pathway to the White House. It's just a matter of how bad do we want to beat the Republicans. That's not what they're fighting. They're fighting over Joe Biden? What a time to be a Democrat. Not that, not here to claim that being a Republican is the greatest thing in the world by any stretch of the imagination, but what a time to be a Democrat. Latest news update. The first alert forecast sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. From Color 10 Fox 49, meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Rain throughout the day, high of only 75 today. 62 for an overnight low tonight. Sunny, warmer, 86 tomorrow. Warmer yet Thursday, sunny with a high near 89. Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line. Funny that Biden was supposed to be the great uniter, right? That's a great point. Of the country. This is a guy that is destroying his own party. Can't even unify his own party. Traffic update now. I wanted to spend a couple of moments talking about this Project 2025 and the discussion, the public discussion and reporting on it has red flags all over it. Not the project itself, but the reporting on it, because you hear a lot of characterizations without evidence, which has become very common in the media. I went and I grabbed just a couple of different stories that talking about, what is Project 2025? It, among other things, gets described as Donald Trump trying to completely recreate America. No. First off, it doesn't have anything to do with Trump. This is a Heritage Foundation sort of a platform listing of these are things that we'd like to have. Not that there won't be some people who are involved in the Trump administration, but this isn't a Trump deal. Trump strategically seems to see this as something that the media can use as a distraction, and he's said, "I've not even read this thing, But he said there's some things in it I like from what I know, some I don't, but it's not anything he sat down and studied. There was one of the articles that I happened to grab. It was from the Dallas, whatever the main paper in Dallas is, Dallas, Texas. And among other things, it said that it wants to take the independent Department of Justice and put it under the executive branch. Well, it is under the executive. It's not this independent. I mean, it is supposed to theoretically operate independently, but the head of it is the Attorney General of the United States, which reports to the President of the United States. So you see disinformation like that. It's similar to the coverage of the immunity opinion coming from the Supreme Court, claiming that it's giving immunity to the president when it comes to the president's official acts, and it did no such thing. It was simply a recognition of the way things have always been. A claim that Project 2025 wants to take this totally independent institution. It's just like the Supreme Court or the legislative body and take that Justice Department and put it under the executive, give Trump control of it. It is an executive branch institution. There were other, in that one particular so-called article, that threw out all sorts of allegations, like it wants to throw people in prison who make pornography. Now, if I'm writing an article like that, I'm going to cite where that is. If I'm a journalist, and maybe I'm very old school when I was in school and we had to write papers, and if you made some sort of assertion, some sort of claim, you had to, and if it was referencing something specific, you had to cite the source. Remember that? You maybe go down to the bottom. There'd be a little number next to the claim 1, and then at the bottom of the page 1, and then it would cite the source of the claim. Well, it's much easier now with digital because you just have it highlighted and you can click on it and it goes to it. None of that was there. You'd think if these things were true, you would desperately want your readers like, hey, don't look, here it is. You can see it for yourself. Pass it along. Don't do that. David Harsanyi wrote up a brief piece titled, I couldn't find a single Christian nationalist policy in Project 2025. And this is one of the other characterizations that the left, as they have continued the march towards demonizing Christianity, labeling it Christian nationalist, make it sound like some sort of domestic terrorist organization. And so they are labeling Project 2025 as this Christian nationalist. As one wants to replace our government with a Christian nationalist government. Oh. Biden says that the document should scare every single American, as if he's read it. Now, as is noted in Harsanyi's piece, most of the Project 2025, quote, mandate is just a wish list of long-held, run-of-the-mill conservative policy positions. Now, the AP claims that the effort champions a dramatic expansion of presidential power. Yet nothing in Project 2025 is even on par with a number of things Biden has done, such as the forgiveness plan, the transferring of debt from one group of Americans to another, despite the fact that the Supreme Court said you cannot do that. And he knows that they said it because he brags about defying them. Project 2025, we're warned, suggests the firing of as many as 50,000 federal workers, an act which is well within the purview of the president. These are talking about people that are employees under the executive. Who are these people supposed to be accountable to? See, the world that the left loves is being in control and then putting people that are loyal to you in these positions, and then they're positions that no one can remove but them. And they're not accountable to the people. We've got to live in, and this is, of course, the way things were intended to be, in which we, the people, have the ability to get rid of and replace people who have the ability to get rid of employees that work for us as federal employees. Otherwise, there's no accountability. In other words, put it the other way, every single person who is paid for by tax dollars should be fireable by someone who is accountable to the American people. There must be that direct link. Anyone who is in a government position should be fireable by somebody that we can fire. Otherwise, there's no accountability whatsoever. Project 2025 also suggests eliminating the Department of Education and its woke-dominated system of public schools, which, by the way, ever since I have been alive, conservatives have been saying they will do. This isn't anything new. And I have yet to see anyone argue how it is that the Department of Education in any way, shape, or form has resulted in the improvement of education of children in this country. But like most government programs, particularly federal, they don't have to show that they do anything good. In fact, the results can consistently prove otherwise, and then the answer to that is, well, that just means it needs to be bigger and have more of your money. Project 2025 suggests prohibiting the FBI from being a dictator of free speech in the name of misinformation and disinformation. Oh, is this what's so radical? That there should not be some law enforcement entity in this country, individuals who have the power to put you in prison, that maybe we should not have them dictating what is and is not free speech in this country? I would argue being in opposition to these positions is what's radical. We're going to take a break, continue on with some of the outrageous things that are in the Project 2025 they keep trying to scare us over. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. Look at this. Everclear special guest Marcy Playground. KY3 Grandstand. This is going to be at the 88th Annual Ozark Empire Fair, July 25th through August 3rd. You can win a pair of tickets to the fair and the concert. Everclear special guest Marcy Playground at ksgf.com or on the KSGF app. Traffic update, I'm Nick Reed. The First Alert Forecast, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. From Color 10 Fox 49, meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Rainy day, high of 75, 62 tonight, 86 tomorrow with sun, and Thursday sunny, high near 89. A1 Custom Car Care for all of your car care needs. Pre-purchase inspection, very important. Very important. This is not your government-mandated run-of-the-mill check to make sure that the vehicle's road ready. This is to go through, elbows deep, checking everything out, taking things apart. That way you know exactly what it is that you're purchasing. It is a fantastic tool to have, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you know, even if there's some things that are wrong, like, well, you're probably going to need to do this, and we would recommend that you replace this. This is okay, but it's something to be on your radar. It's not a green light, red light, but it's just to let you know what you're purchasing. So you can decide, nah, I don't want to, or I do, but I'm going to go back to the seller and say, hey, I had it checked out. If you knock off $1,200, I'll go ahead and purchase it. $1,200 because this is what needs to be fixed. This is some of the things that I'm going to have to do probably within the next year or so to purchase this vehicle, and so this is what we're looking at. Then you get to make that decision for yourself based off of having the most information possible about what you're buying. A1 Custom Car Care, that is the pre-purchase inspection. One of the disinformation campaigns that is being run by the Democrat Party and the media right now is regarding Project 2025. And it's amazing how many people out there are afraid of it, but they can't even tell you why. Well, what's in it? Well, I don't know. It's just Trump, and it wants to give him a lot of power. Even articles that are written that make some of the claims, which are disinformation, and I've gone through, when they cite, well, it will do this, they don't cite where in the Project 2025 that says they're going to do it. It's very easy when you have the internet and when you have a digital article, because you can create hyperlinks where when you make a claim, you can make it clear, oh, just click on this, and then it will take you to that area of the platform so you can see it for yourself. That is lacking in all of the coverage. They will either, in their articles, just tell you this is what's going to happen, or they'll find an expert to tell you. Experts do not replace facts. In fact, I think most of us have learned over the last several years, the term expert, the label expert, should be a red flag. Because generally when it comes to those in the media, that's all that an expert is. It is replacement for factual information. You find somebody who is going to say whatever, to set the stage, the narrative that the paper, the outlet, the journalist wants to set, and then they replace what would or should be facts. Instead, they give this so-called expert, and that's supposed to be fact enough for you. Some of the areas that the left is pitching the fit over the most when they do talk about specific aspects of Project 2025, which is not a Trump platform deal, it is not a Republican National Committee platform deal, it is the Heritage Foundation and what they would like to see for the country. They say that, so they pitch a fit about the fact that Project 2025 suggests eliminating the Department of Education. Project 2025 also suggests prohibiting the FBI from acting as a law enforcement wing over free speech in this country. In other words, the executive using the FBI to police and monitor your speech and then shut it down because they claim that it's misinformation. Project 2025 also suggests deactivating the FBI investigations that are contrary to the national interest. It also proposes ending the government's war on fossil fuels so that we can go back to being energy independent. Now, these are some of the big ones that will be bullet pointed in articles that are supposed to scare us. What is interesting is the contradiction here, because what they tell us is that this is a dramatic expansion of presidential power. It's the opposite. These areas that they are portraying as something we should all be frightened is diminishing the power of the executive in this country. Eliminating the Department of Education. In other words, getting, at least in that capacity, the federal government out of education. Does that sound like the expansion of presidential powers? Detaching the executive branch, detaching the president from what goes on in your school district? As it stands now, the FBI, under the executive, and this is something that isn't disputed, we've known it for a few years now, the FBI local field offices were directed to treat parents who show up at school board meetings as potential domestic terrorists. Saying that should not happen any longer is not a dramatic expansion of presidential power. It is a limiting of presidential power. Saying that the federal government should halt the war on fossil fuels is not a dramatic expansion of presidential powers. Every one of these pillars, if you will, in Project 2025 that the left is screaming about is a limitation of the executive branch powers, the presidential powers in this country, but they run around saying that it is a dramatic expansion of presidential powers. And as usual, it's a complete contradiction because that's what the left does. They, of course, claim that it is a dramatic expansion of presidential powers because that sounds scarier, because that fits into the narrative that Donald Trump wants to be a dictator. Really? Because, again, one, Project 2025 isn't his deal. It's Heritage Foundation. But if he wanted to be a dictator, that would be sort of a weird way of going about it. By severing the executive branch powers over a number of areas of our daily lives, whether it's free speech, whether it's education. whether it has to do with energy. Now, the one area in which they can potentially point to and say, well, here is the dramatic increase of presidential power, is when it comes to the firing of federal employees. But that, once again, these are people in the executive branch. These are employees of the president. You know, in terms of accountability, they must be accountable to someone. And if not the president of the United States, ultimately, who is an elected individual, then who? Some non-elected person? So that you have people working in the United States, paid for by the taxpayers, who have power over us, and there's not a thing we can do about it? We have absolutely no recourse? Does that really fit into the we the people idea? After the break, David Harsanyi notes the other component to this, in which they're trying to paint this as scary Christianity, Christian nationalist, that this is trying to create a Christian nationalist nation. And he found it's remarkable that there really isn't much about Jesus in this thing. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. Talking a bit about the Project 2025, increasingly been getting people asking questions about it. What is it? It is something that, as usual, is the source of great disinformation, not the project itself, but the media's coverage of it. And they are portraying this as something that is of the Trump campaign. It's not. It's from the Heritage Foundation. Trump has said there's some things in it that he likes, some that he doesn't like from what he's heard about it. And it's not to say that there will not be some things in here that the Trump administration doesn't try to implement. And frankly, most of what the left claims is so horrifying about it are really good things, and the opposite of what they claim. Claiming that this is a dramatic expansion of presidential power, but the things that they complain most about are things that are, in many capacities, the elimination of presidential power over certain aspects of our country, like the war on fossil fuels, education, the elimination of the Department of Education, the blocking of the FBI, which is under the executive branch, of policing free speech. These are all limitations on the executive, not enhanced powers. The other scare tactic they're using as they continue to try to demonize Christians in this country is to really push this scary notion of Christian nationalism. What is that? You don't need to know. You just need to know that it's scary. And that this is the dream platform of Christian nationalists. But as David Harsanyi, who's a senior editor at The Federalist, noted, after reading through the entire Project 2025 listing, there's surprisingly little mention of Christianity. In fact, not a single mention of Jesus or Christ. That seems sort of weird, right? What is it, 5,000, 9,000 words? It's a 900-plus page document that we're told is all about Christian nationalism, yet Jesus is never even mentioned. That's weird. The policy guide features in almost 1,000 pages only 8 mentions of God, most of those noting our, quote, God-given individual rights to live freely, which, of course, is one of the foundational ideas of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. Christian is mentioned 7 times in the almost 1,000-page Project 2025. One is simply a warning about the left's threat to tax exemptions on churches and religious schools. Another mention suggests doing more to protect minority Middle Eastern Christians when it comes to foreign policy. Minority rights. Another reference reminds us about the COVID-era authoritarians who shut down churches on the holiest day of the Christian calendar. Faith is also touched on in a section about attacks on religious freedom that, quote, compel a Christian website designer to imagine, create, and publish a custom website celebrating same-sex marriage, but cannot compel an LGBT person to design a similar website celebrating opposite-sex marriage. So it's noting here that we have a dual system, of course, that you are, as a Christian, currently forced or compelled to violate your beliefs, but if you're LGBTQ, you're not. So it's not in the context of promoting Christianity, but just treating Christians like everyone else. Equality. So what you have here with the Project 2025 is a disinformation campaign that it is a, quote, this is the Associated Press referenced it, a dramatic expansion of presidential power, when in fact the areas that they're screaming about the most are limiting presidential powers and continuing to label it as a Christian nationalist policy when in 1,000 pages or just under, there's no mention of Jesus. In the mentions of Christianity, it's about equality and treating Christians just like everyone else. And in foreign policy, advocating for policy that protects Christian minorities in the Middle East who are tortured, murdered, ostracized. I don't know about you, but those don't seem like very radical ideas to me. But apparently to the Democrat Party and the media, they are. And just notice, when you read articles about Project 2025, they are just telling you, well, here's what it does. They don't give you links to the actual platform in order to demonstrate this is exactly what it is they're going to do. Or what they'll do is they'll have a so-called expert on to explain to you. You don't need to read it yourself, of course. We have an expert here to explain it for you. Because this is a disinformation campaign to once again try to scare people. This is all the Democrats have right now, is to scare people. And if you listen to Democrat voters, if you read the things that they post on social media, that's all they ever talk about, is how they're scared. Oh, I'm so scared of this. I'm so scared of that. Now think about that relationship. That is a toxic relationship. When you are conditioned to simply be afraid of anyone other than the person you're in the relationship with, that's toxic. That is not healthy. If you had a friend who was in a relationship with another person, and that other person had them frightened of everyone in the world, told them that you couldn't be trusted, that you were out to get them, your friend increasingly isolated him or herself from all of their friends and family because they believed that only my significant other here is the one who really cares about me, everyone is out to get me, you would want that person to be in counseling. You would say, you need to get away from that guy or gal. You listen to the reasons and that Democrats talk about being against Trump or supporting Joe Biden, and it's all fear. You even have Democrats out there going so far as this. I mean, Whoopi Goldberg's one of them. I don't care if Joe Biden poops his pants. They don't care how bad Joe Biden is because they are, quote, afraid of Donald Trump, someone who, by the way, was president for 4 years, and they managed to survive very well. In fact, their lives economically, for the most part, most of them improved. Many of them exercised their free speech rights in ways that they never, ever did before. Not only were they allowed to do it, but they received awards for it. The more you trashed on Trump, the more stories that you wrote about the fake Russian collusion, the more awards you got. Yes, quite a dictator he was. Worst dictator ever. Fear, fear, fear. If the Democrat Party did not have fear, they would have nothing. If you were to ask Democrat voters, without just talking about being scared, or what you think someone is going to do, or, well, they said this, explain why it is that you want Joe Biden to be president. Explain why it is. The things that have been done, real things with real results that Trump did that were so horrific and that Biden have done that are so wonderful. And I think you'd find a lot of people who could not even begin to write out the list. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. To further illustrate the point that without fear, the Democrats have nothing, DNC, this is a story with The Hill, DNC to launch billboards, bus signs in Milwaukee for RNC hitting Trump over Roe and democracy. Fear. Now, unfortunately for the Biden campaign, strategically, this in all likelihood will not benefit for a couple of reasons. One, when it comes to democracy, of course, the scaring people into believing democracy as we know it is going to just go away under Donald Trump. First off, if he's voted in, hey, that's what the people want, right? Isn't that democracy? It's funny how the very people who claim that using the democratic process, the process of democracy in order to choose a president of the United States, if you don't choose the way they tell you, then you're a danger to democracy. Isn't that a fun contradiction? Furthermore, polling shows that by double digits, when it comes to the issue of who is a greater danger to democracy, Joe Biden is the one who most people fear. This according to consistent polling, double digits. That more people believe by double digits that when it comes to protecting, quote, democracy, Donald Trump is the better person for the job. So it's not a real smart idea to put up billboards talking about an issue that your opponent is the winner on. And then when it comes to Roe, the whole fear factor there is that you're going to die in an alley because you want an abortion and can't get one. Problem is, there's not going to be a single person in Milwaukee or the greater Milwaukee area who sees that sign, who has either been denied an abortion and was forced with no alternatives to have their child, and there will not be anyone who knows someone who was forced beyond their control with no alternatives to have a child that they wanted to kill. No one. Especially in Wisconsin. We've got news coming up in 60 seconds. Streaming live, KSGF.com. I'm Nick Reed. The Hill reporting that the DNC is going to launch a billboard campaign and bus advertisement campaign in Milwaukee during the Republican National Convention that is trying to frighten people into believing that democracy is in peril if Donald Trump wins the presidency, and reminding people of the evils of overturning Roe v. Wade. And I noted that when polled by double digits, most people, when it comes to their concern that democracy, as they call it, is in peril, that Donald Trump is the one that will be a greater protector of it. And I noted before the top of the hour that their problem with trying to scare people over the overturning of Roe v. Wade is that they are not going to get that billboard in front of a single person who's been denied an abortion with absolutely no other options, particularly in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. But what that billboard will get in front of are people who have had abortions. Plenty of them. The number of abortions has increased since that opinion was handed down by Roe v. Wade. So it's much less impacting. You know, there was, and I think there was a good argument that the midterm elections were impacted by Roe v. Wade because it was in the immediate aftermath, and you had the media out there spreading disinformation along with the Democrats that you were going to have, these women were being convinced that they were going to be forced to have their own child, and they'd have no options whatsoever. It was Handmaid's Tale. You had a lot of guys out there worried that they would no longer be able to knock some chick up and be able to convince her to get an abortion. But as time passes, the reliance on the effectiveness of that disinformation is naive to the fact that the moms who were convinced they would not be able to kill their own children have realized over time that they still can. So the fear factor isn't there for nearly as many of them. There may still be some that have that fear, but if you're to take the number of women who see those billboards, who have been forced to have their own child and they had no other option, versus the number of mothers who have been able to kill their own child since Roe v. Wade was overturned, and you're going to get a lot of women who see that and they're like, well, gosh, actually, I was still able to kill my baby. So it's not that big of a deal after all. Got to look at the weather coming up. Rain today, a bit cooler, but we are going to get sunshine making its way back in as we get further down the week, and temperatures warming up once again. First, the latest news. And the first alert forecast sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. From Color 10, Fox 49, meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Rain throughout the day today, high near 75. Cloudy tonight, 62 for a low. Sunny, 86 tomorrow. Thursday, sunny, high near 89. Streaming live, KSGF.com, also on YouTube. That video feed sponsored by Springfield Wraps, designer of the KSGF studio. Congressman Burleson joins us this morning, and gosh, I guess we're pretty much where we were last time we spoke with you, post-debate disaster, and there was digging in of heels on both sides. I want to say last time we spoke, increasingly some Democrats began to come out and say, yes, he needs to step aside. There was that interview with George Stephanopoulos, certainly didn't appear to help him. You've got some Democrats that are saying he needs to drop out. Others say no. I saw Mark Penn, former pollster for the Clintons, saying that listen, Biden is the nominee, and it would be a disaster to try to switch him out. Then you got David Axelrod of the Obama camp saying that Trump will win in a landslide if Biden's the nominee. What are your thoughts on all this?
Yeah, it's. I think that they're all right. All of them are right.
Yeah.
But, it's going to be difficult to get him off of the ballot. I think that he's right now defiant, but it's all in his hands. And if his team and him are going to stick, fight all the way through, then I don't know. I think what I worry about is that the impact that this is having on the United States of America these next few months, where we don't have someone whose eyes on the ball, that really, if you're Putin or you're Xi Jinping, you're thinking that this is your opportunity, the one opportunity that you might have, because America will never be more vulnerable than it is right now.
Yeah, well, Lord, hope not. I can't imagine that scenario.
But yeah, I don't think that the problem that they're facing is that they've got a huge, hundreds of millions of dollars that they've raised in campaign funds that's sitting in an account that can only be spent on the Biden-Harris campaign. So they're kind of stuck with that. Now Biden could drop out and then Harris could use it and pick another VP. But she's so goofy. I don't know that that there's much of a win there. Because it's just the way she talks. It's like a yoga instructor or something.
Well, the thing of her, and I mean, Democrats do a very good job of, they're sort of like an Etch-a-Sketch of sorts, where they have one drawing, and then the moment it's inconvenient, they shake it up and start from scratch and draw a completely different picture. And Kamala Harris is someone that I don't even think she made it to the first contest in the primary. She was so unpopular, even with Democrats, that she ended up dropping out. And it's not as if you can really say, oh, well, since then we've seen what a wonderful leader and successful individual she is. I mean, every one of these different tasks that she has been given, whether it's border czar or AI, you can't really say, oh, here is what she did. This was the initiative she launched. This is how she went about it. These are the results so far. There really is nothing. And she does poll even less popular than Biden, yet they act like, well, she's the obvious next choice. I've just never seen, if the Democrats did not have the media, you wonder where they would be as a party.
Yeah, the question is how's the media going to spin her? How are they going to rebrand Kamala? That will be the question. But I think that us reminding people, I think if she becomes the nominee, we're going to be talking about Willie Brown a lot.
Yeah, well, and not to mention, it will be a continuation of the policies that we're under now. So essentially, voting for Kamala Harris is no different than voting for Joe Biden, other than to some degree the cognitive abilities. But in terms of policy, it's not like Kamala Harris is going to turn around the economic policies and go do an about face or anything else. So we would really, you take out the cognitive issue aspect of it, and realize it would just be an extension of what we've already had. And I think most small business owners, most middle income individuals in this country, middle income families, recognize that that is not something that we can afford to do.
Yeah, I think to your point, Biden was hurting in the polls because of how people feel, even before the debate. So, people see what's happening at the border. They're not happy with that. They see what's happening with their, the fact that every family is getting to the end of the month with no money, and still part of the month left. And I know our family, we're struggling sometimes.
Yeah.
I can only imagine how some people are getting through, and it's just it's pretty rough environment. You can't look at anything and say that this guy's been a success. He touts that he's created all of these jobs, but when you account for the fact that half of the jobs that have been created are being occupied by someone who wasn't in the United States before his administration, that's horrific. It's basically the great reset or the great replacement of American workers in the United States. So this is why people are suffering. This is why things are, while they might look good on paper, it's not how people actually feel.
We are talking with Congressman Burleson. The Republican National Committee yesterday formally adopted Trump's 2024 party platform, and there's a number of areas, of course, covered. One of them that's getting a lot of attention is abortion, and what some critics are saying is the shying away from the issue or watering it down. Now, I'm recognizing that aside from what's the best way to go about it, I get what he's doing. He recognizes abortion right now as a weapon that can be used to harm his reelection chances and other Republicans because of disinformation. And I think he also sees that, listen, I've done in the first term what Republicans have always claimed they would do, never did. I've done more in terms of government's involvement in the issue than anyone ever has on abortion in modern day. I'm going to move on to other things. This is not, I think that he sees it as abortion is not something that I'm going to be dealing with as president if I'm reelected. And so there's really no need to have it put in the platform in a manner that is going to make it an issue when realistically it's not going to be an issue over the next 4 years. That's his tactic. Now, whether that's the right tactic or not for the issue is up for debate, but that's what I see what's going on. What are your thoughts?
I think that I find it disappointing. I personally don't think that we should shy away from the topic. I think so I'm pretty disappointed that we're softening the language in the platform, but it's not as bad as it could have been.
Right.
So the way I understand it is that the language that they are dropping or that they've dropped is the language that calling for a national,
right.
Something across the nation, and they're going to the states. And I understand that states' rights issue. I just personally feel that, murder is illegal
right.
in any state in America. And there's a reason why if you commit murders in multiple states, the federal government comes after you, or if you cross state lines, because and so I just think that calling an abortion anything but a murder is watering it down, in my opinion.
Well, sure. And to me, we've been through this when we had the discussion in terms of human rights as to whether or not slavery was a states' rights issue. And, we fought that battle. And ultimately, the recognition was, listen, life is life. And one human being cannot hold that sort of dominion over another one. It's not a state right issue. It's a human right issue. And I agree with you on that. I think Trump. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say that I think that where we're at is that, and I've had these conversations with people before, is that before Dobbs, is not substantively different than after Dobbs.
Mm-hmm.
So, and let me explain, it's that, you had before Dobbs decision, states like Missouri, Alabama, all of the red states had passed laws in their state statutes that all but prohibited abortions. Okay. In Missouri, we got to the point where there was no abortion clinics. There were 0 abortions being conducted in the state of Missouri. Okay. And after Dobbs, it's basically the same thing.
Yeah.
In Illinois, it's a haven. People can go there and, in my opinion, murder their child. And that's awful, but that's the way it was before Dobbs, and that's the way it is after Dobbs. And so as much, I say that all of this to say, when the left is like screaming from the rooftops that this Dobbs decision is, so horrible, my question is, how personal, how to the person that functionally, how has it changed anyone's lives?
Right.
Because I don't think it has. And I think that to what Trump is, I'm just trying to say, in one way, I can understand what they're trying to do is let the dust settle where we're at right now. And then later on, maybe we'll have a discussion about whether there should be a national threshold for abortion.
Well, and to your point on no one's life has really changed, pre or post Dobbs decision, there was an article in The Hill, we were talking about it earlier, in which the DNC is going to be buying billboards that talk about Trump being a threat to democracy and the overturning of Roe. And the lack of effectiveness, I believe, is going to be rooted in the fact that there isn't going to be a single woman who has seen that, who sees those signs, who has been forced to not have an abortion when she wanted to, forced to actually have her child. But there will be a lot of women who have had abortions since the overturning that see those billboards. And so I think a lot of that fear factor that may have been there during the midterm elections, increasingly you have more and more women that are having abortions, and they're going to be like, well, wait a minute, actually, everything they said about me being forced to have my own child actually isn't true. And so I think that the nature of that effectiveness is diminished every day that goes by, because people are realizing what it is that you're saying. And that in reality, it really, in terms of abortions, it hasn't made much of a change. If anything, we've seen an increase in abortions. We're talking with Congressman Burleson. I wanted to ask you about this Safeguard American Voter Eligibility, the SAVE Act, that, among other things, would require voters to prove citizenship in order to vote. Democrats are against it. Biden is against it, of course. Now, they claim, well, it's redundant because that's already against the law. But I think we all know the reality here. Is this going to come up for a vote, and how do you see this playing out?
Yeah, it is. It's Chip Roy's bill. I'm a co-sponsor of it. I think it's the most common sense thing in the world. And it's a great position to point out how radical the Democrats and the left have become, that they literally want to start allowing people that, came in yesterday to vote and change this country, reset it, replace it with whatever it is that they want to create. And it's just, I think that this is a good vote to take. It's not going to pass the Senate, obviously, but it's good to put Democrats on record. It'll be interesting to see how many Democrats vote for it. That will be kind of a watershed vote.
Right. Any final thoughts? Anything that is going on under the radar that people should be aware of?
We're bringing up the legislative branch appropriation bill this week. This is boring stuff. There's not much changes in it. What could have happened is there was a lot of debate. There's even Republicans that for some reason there's debate about whether or not to allow the legislature to get a pay raise. Apparently back in the 90s, there was a bill that was passed that where it made it illegal for people like me to have any kind of private business or private income outside of the building. But in lieu of that, then Congress raised its salary and put an automatic cost of living adjustment. And then every year we basically take action to vote to reject the cost of living adjustment. And that's happened since the 90s. But but yeah, that's always kind of the question is that language going to be in there or not? And what's really fascinating, not to nerd out, but there's some people that say that is unconstitutional because we're taking, because I can't remember which number it is, but there's an amendment in the Constitution that says that Congress cannot vote to raise its own salary or change its own salary. And yet we take a vote to stop ourselves from.
Okay.
So it's an interesting question.
Right. Yeah, because you are voting to impact it one way or another.
Right.
Interesting. All right. Well, listen, as always, appreciate it. And Lord only knows what we will be discussing next week between now and then. Because
there's going to be a lot happen this week. This will be a pretty interesting week.
Well, I know that they're saying some Democrats have this sort of deadline, if you will, in which they're saying that they either hope or they're encouraging Biden to drop out. Now, if he doesn't, I don't know what that means. And, of course, he's hosting this NATO summit. And it seems so counterintuitive that the approach of the Biden camp is to put Biden out there as much as possible, which is not what one would think. I guess they figure they have no other option, that by hiding him like they did last time will make things worse somehow. And so I don't know if they're just banking on good moments or what the deal is, but they just increasingly or seemingly want to put him out there. And it's an interesting tactic. I'd love to know their thoughts behind it, but it doesn't seem as if it's a gamble that will pay off.
I don't know. This week will be telling. See what happens. Nothing will change. I think that there's an opportunity for them to do something during the Republican National Convention because it will suck the oxygen out of Trump's convention. That might be the right timing. I don't know.
Well, I will say I do find it kind of fun and hilarious that Biden is just doubling down and like, I'm not going anywhere on Morning Joe yesterday saying, hey, if Democrats want to challenge me, do it at the convention. I kind of like this. I'm enjoying it from an observational standpoint. Congressman Burleson, as always, thank you, sir. We shall talk with you next week.
Thank you. You too, Nick. Have a great week.
Yep, you do the same. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Let's go ahead and jump over and get the latest traffic. In 90 seconds from there, weather update and audio of the president of the National Education Association, Becky Pringle, who is being compared to Dwight Schrute in the speech that he gave in an episode that mimicked Mussolini. That audio next. I'm Nick Reed. Heck yeah, that is your place for a great home loan. You want a subpar home loan? You want a crappy home loan? You want a mediocre home loan? You want a, 3 out of 5 home loan? There are plenty of places for you to go through that process. But if you want a great one, you want 5 stars, I'd give it more if I could, then you want iwantagreathomeloan.com because you do. The First Alert Forecast sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements from Color 10 Fox 49, meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Rainy day, a high of only 75 today, 62 for a low tonight. Sunny tomorrow, 86. Thursday, sunshine, high near 89. Teachers Union President channels Dwight Schrute in unhinged speech. If you are not familiar with The Office, most of you are, I'm sure, there was an episode that most of you are probably familiar with in which Dwight Schrute was going to be he was salesman of the year, and so he was tasked at the big convention of the company to give a speech, and he was very, very nervous about it. And he was looking for advice, and he felt he wasn't getting very good advice in the places he was going. So then Jim, who is always playing pranks on him, somehow won his trust long enough to essentially trick him into giving a Mussolini-style speech. He convinced him, based off of, he didn't tell him it was Mussolini, but went through, and the characteristics and the speech patterns and the way of delivering the speech was all taken from Mussolini, and then he told Dwight Schrute, yes, this is the path to go. And so he gives this speech, very Mussolini-esque, and of course what turns out to be so funny about it is that it really riles the crowd up, and they love it, and it turns into this wonderful speech. The NEA president, Becky Pringle, took to the stage at a 3 million member labor union annual representative assembly in Philadelphia over the weekend to give a speech that is being compared to Dwight Schrute channeling Mussolini, and this is some of that speech, just to give you a flavor.
Again, they will keep going because we do.
Now, doesn't that sound comforting?
That is very Dwight Schrute.
Oh, when she's pounding just the screaming. She's talking about our students are depending on us to win all things, to preserve our democracy. Now, understand, this is somebody that is in line with Democrat left-wing policies, the Biden administration. This is an administration that views that as perfectly normal. But if you're a parent who hears that and you're like, I don't know, I don't think so. I'm going to go to my local school board meetings and express concerns about things that are going on in my district. Those are the people that we're supposed to be scared of in this country. Not this screaming, hysterical woman talking about how it is the responsibility of that national union to determine all things for your children. It's you as a parent because you think no. These are the people that the media essentially allows to define what is an extremist in this country. While this is perfectly normal to them, this is perfectly reasonable. It's people like that you are supposed to surrender your children to. This is the sort of individual that you are supposed to put all of your trust in. School choice activist, a.k.a. domestic terrorist, clearly, Corey DeAngelis told Fox News, these power-hungry control freaks think that they own your kids. This is a cult that worships government and detests parents. It's true. She went on to say, or he, I don't know if it's a he or she, it's time to defund teachers' unions and allow the money to follow the child. Becky Pringle pulled in Dwight Schrute. She is off the rails and desperate to maintain control over the minds of other people's children. Nikki Neely, founder and president of the nonprofit group Parents Defending Education, pointed out that Pringle failed to mention student learning loss during the nearly half-hour-long address. Well, of course, they never do. They never talk about the failures. They don't talk about the results. This is why they talk in these grand Mussolini-esque speeches about how it is that it is up to them to determine the future of all children. It is up to them to make all of the decisions for your children. You know, if as a culture and society that was a determination that we made that women should just be birthing pods and after that have nothing to do whatsoever with being a mom, you're just there in order to reproduce, then the government's job is to take over. Are those the sort of people that we would really choose? Unhinged, hysterical individuals? Oh. It's Project 2025 that we're supposed to be worried about. Those are the radicals. The people who say, yeah, maybe individuals like that shouldn't be involved in our children's education. I saw a story headline earlier this morning, Trump wanting to slash funding for education. Now, of course, I have no idea whether there's truth to it, isn't truth to it. It's media. But money, so what? Do we really think that that's the problem? I can all but guarantee you that if you had someone in charge who really genuinely knew what they were doing and genuinely had children's education as the number one priority, not political indoctrination, not social indoctrination, not looking at the schools as a way to assimilate young people into these perfect little citizens in the image of government for the purpose of serving government, but truly educating. And you put someone in charge on a local level, you could cut funding in half and still produce better results. You could cut it in half and produce better results than are being produced now. Money is not the problem. If money were the answer, we would have the best education system in the world. We'd have the best results in the world. If money were the answer, then public education would produce better results than private education in this country. And we all know that's not true. Yet per student spending for private education is significantly less than public education spending per student is. Yet the results are worse. Money is not the answer. Yet we still define that as whether you're pro-education or anti-education. That's the whole reason for that headline that I mentioned regarding Trump. Trump proposal to slash education. So what? If, again, doubt that it's true. It's the media. So you can't trust them. But if so, so what? But you are supposed to be conditioned to believe that money equals better education. And that isn't to say that money can't enhance, if you have a good system in place, enhance that good system. But if you have a bad system in place, all you're doing is enhancing the bad system. Money is an enhancer. It's like the lottery. It's like money in general. When you have people who are bad with money that win the lottery, they end up blowing it or they end up dead. I mean, generally one of the two. There's an entire show that was built around this. I forgot what the show was called, but it was storylines of people who won the lottery and then horrible things went wrong for them. Because it simply enhanced what their behavior already was. It gave them tools in order to enhance their behavior. On the flip side, if you have somebody who's really poor, but they're very, very good with money, which odds are, if you're very good with money, no matter what your job is, no matter what your income is, you will get out of poverty. It's not how much money you make, it's what you do with it. It's your behavior. And if you are somebody who is very good with money and you make $50,000 a year and all of a sudden you have some sort of windfall and you have $50 million, the good fiscally responsible behaviors you had as an individual making $50,000 a year is going to be enhanced to the tune of $50 million. If you are somebody that makes $50,000 a year and you are very bad with money, you blow it all, no savings, barely paycheck to paycheck, and you come into a windfall of $50 million, guess what's going to happen? You're going to enhance those bad behaviors. It's the same thing with spending on education. If the methods that are utilized in the education system are counterproductive, if they are not working, adding more money is just going to enhance that broken form of education. So not only is it not a positive thing to throw more money at a system that doesn't work to enhance its ability to not work and affect even more kids, but it's worse. It makes things worse. I'm all for an increased spending for education if you are increasing an education system that is working, not one that isn't. And the sad thing about it is it's so many these unions, like this hysterical gal here, none of that matters to them. It makes no difference. And unfortunately on school board, and we've seen it, unfortunately a majority of the school board members in Springfield They may tell themselves that they care about children's education, but they don't. They don't really deep down. They may care about the idea of children's education. But if you really genuinely, truly care about anybody, and you are affecting them in a way that is resulting in negative outcomes, then you stop doing that and you do something different in order to create positive outcomes. You don't say, let's double down and do more of the damage. I mean, it is sinful. It is truly sinful what we are doing to children in this country when it comes to education. And then, of course, you enhance that with this taking kids that have psychological issues and instead of addressing the issues, convincing them that sex change operations are going to help. I mean, it is historically horrific what we do to young people in this country. It is sinful. It's wrong. It's dark, evil. And it's to the point that those who are doing the most harm, the most damage, the most evil are the ones that we're told care the most. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. Pyramid Roofing Company talk a text line 447 KSGF. Nick, 100 years ago, we did not have the Department of Education, and students came out of school more educated than they do today. There was a posting that was made somewhere, and it made a really good point. And it was a good point because it was simple, obvious, but not recognized so often. And that is when the big government, big control people describe homeschooling, they describe it oftentimes as experimental. Like this is uncharted territory, and noted that actually 99.999% of humanity was homeschooling. It is this idea that there should be some centralized government, individuals that oftentimes have no children of their own, make the decision for millions and millions and millions of parents, dictate Not only what should be learned in terms of your standard history and math and science, but things socially like gender fluidity and all of these other areas that they have managed to infiltrate. Issues of morality. That's the experiment. If you want to look at the timeline in terms of how it is that human beings have been educated, it isn't the homeschooling that is the experiment that's unknown. It's the public education. That, relatively speaking, is the experimental form of education. Claudia Tenney calling on the DOJ, or for the DOJ, to investigate Hunter Biden laptop signers for election interference. Tenney said the Justice Department needs to investigate whether the signers put out a false statement regarding the letter in 2019 because the laptop, of course, was later proven as authentic when used as evidence in the First Sons federal gun trial. Now, Claudia Tenney, she is a congresswoman from New York, Republican. She announced yesterday that she was sending the letter to the Justice Department requesting the investigation into the 51 signers for spreading the disinformation that it was a Russian information operation and not a real laptop. Just the News recently reported that 2 of the signers were CIA contractors, and the agency officials knew about the letter ahead of the publication. Tenney said that the Justice Department needs to investigate whether the signers put out the statement that knowing, it was false, saying, quote, "I've written a letter that will come out either today or tomorrow asking for a referral and an investigation into the criminality and the wrongfulness of these agents and Anthony Blinken in trying to interfere with our election and making a false statement back in 2020. The Congresswoman also urged them to consider whether the letter violated the Hatch Act, noting that this is a violation because you're engaging in political interference with an election as a member of the executive branch and as a federal employee. But, they're Democrats. They fall into that category of people who are above the law. Traffic update, I'm Nick Reed. I'm not sure if this was mentioned in the traffic report. I wasn't listening, but one of you sent in, thank you very much, on the Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line. Traffic incident, intersection Battlefield Glenstone, stalled vehicle westbound Battlefield just before Glenstone in the left lane. The car is stopped. Emergency flashers on. It is not a problem now, but it soon will be. That is, of course, unless it does get moved. So a heads up on that. Gubernatorial candidate, State Senator Bill Eigel, making headlines, telling Just the News that he supports bringing the Ten Commandments law that recently was passed in Louisiana to the state of Missouri, saying there were two things from Louisiana he wanted to bring here: the 10 Commandments law and the state's law that make it a crime to be in the state illegally, saying, I'd like to see us replicate these successes. My only regret is I want to be leading. I want us to be first. I want there to be a couple of years from now a gubernatorial candidate on your show from another state where you have to ask them, have you heard about all the big things that Missouri's doing? That's what I've got in mind for the Show Me State. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. She is your first call. If you are entertaining the notion of selling your home, you're just curious what it's worth, or maybe you've decided you're going to, maybe it's 6 months down the road, so you're going to start slowly and making home improvements. You're going to start updating things because you just know that that's something you're going to need to do in order to sell your home, get the most out of it. Don't do any of that until you call her first. Have her come check out your home. There may be things that you are planning on spending money on that are not going to help you any. You're not going to get that return. There may be some things that you don't realize you need to do that you will need to do. So you could unnecessarily end up spending money that you do not need to spend in order to put your home on the market with the chances increased of selling it for the price that you want. That's what Emily Johnson's going to do. And she has all those connections. So if there are things that you need to have done, and maybe some of that, after you get the inspection, you're putting it on the market, there's an inspection done by a potential seller or buyer rather, and there's some work that needs to be done. She's a tremendous resource when it comes to that. So that saves you a lot of time as well. All of your home buying needs, your home selling needs, you are not going to find anyone better than Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. There is an election integrity group that is hammering Democrats in North Carolina for trying to rig the election there. Now, during the primary, there was rigging that was done in a number of different ways, moving around primaries, some states canceling primaries so no one could challenge Biden. One state, was either North or South Carolina, in which they just banned all the other Democrat challengers from being on the ballot, only allowing Biden on the ballot. Then when it came to prepping for the general election, Democrats tried to ban Donald Trump from being on the ballot, which would then only allow voters, in terms of anyone who had a chance of selecting Joe Biden. Third-party candidates are now suffering the wrath of those who are trying to rig the election. The DNC has a couple of attorneys, I believe it's specifically in New York, that are working to ban anyone that might siphon votes away from Joe Biden from being on the ballot. Those would be third-party candidates, and North Carolina is getting in on the action. The Fair Election Fund has launched a $175,000 media blitz, which includes ads targeting 3 Democrats on the North Carolina State Board of Elections, maneuvering to block RFK Jr. and Cornel West from the ballot in the Tar Heel State. The media buy includes digital ads, mobile billboards, and 2D projections. The group alleges Alan Hirsch, Jefferson Carmon, and Siobhan Millen are colluding to block the voting rights of North Carolinians. The timely ads launched this week that the State Board of Elections in North Carolina is reconsidering its decision to block the 2 third-party candidates from the ballot after the 3 Democrats voted not to certify West and Kennedy a few weeks earlier under immense pressure from national Democrats and Biden allies in Washington. The trio, who overruled the 2 Republicans on the board, made their ruling despite both Kennedy and West amassing enough petition signatures to qualify for the ballot. So in other words, they were legally qualified, but the Biden campaign and national Democrats pressured them to ban the candidates that were, this is the perspective that we need to better appreciate. The reason that they qualified to be on the ballot was because enough registered voters in North Carolina put their signature to paper saying we want them on the ballot. This isn't as much of a denial of rights of Cornel West and R.F. Kennedy Jr. as it is the thousands of citizens in North Carolina who said we want them on the ballot. This is a political party. As I mentioned, they're going to buy bus ads in Milwaukee claiming that Republicans are the danger to democracy. Where do Republicans do this? What Republican primaries were altered? Were the timelines altered? Were rigged, in which they banned people challenging Trump from being on the ballot? Where did that occur? Answer: didn't. In what states did you have Republicans, be they Secretary of States or in any position, move to block Joe Biden from being on the ballot for unconstitutional reasons? Nowhere. In what states are Republicans, even after valid signatures are collected by citizens of any given state, to have Cornel West or Jill Stein or R.F. Kennedy Jr. on the ballot? Where is it that Republicans are trying to ban those people from being on the ballots? I don't know how those of you who continue to convince yourselves that Donald Trump is going to rig elections or cancel elections, he's going to be the end of democracy as we know it, when it is the Democrat Party that is actively trying to cancel elections, and did in the primary in at least one state. I believe there were more. Actively trying to block political opposition from being on the ballot. Now, you can tell yourself all you want that, well, Donald Trump, he should have been because insurrection. Well, unfortunately for you, 9-0, the Supreme Court said, no, it doesn't work that way. And that includes every one of the left-wing Supreme Court justices appointed by people like Barack Obama and Joe Biden. How is it that you justify banning people like Cornel West, a black man? He's got, tell you what, birds of a feather. I mean, we've seen that right here. Crystal Quaid, running for the governorship as a Democrat, went to court to try and kick a black man off the ballot that was going to be challenging her. Here you have Democrats in North Carolina, Cornel West, black man, trying to kick him off the ballot or block him from being on there in the first place. Where is it that you find in this country Republicans attempting to block back black people from being on the ballot? Find you a couple here in the United States, right here in Springfield, one of them, and they're always Democrats. I mean, these are just truths. Oh, but it's Republicans that are racist. It's Republicans that disenfranchise voters. How about that big talking point? Kamala Harris should be all over this. Wasn't she charged with securing people's right to vote? It's interesting that it's her political party that's doing everything they can to disenfranchise people from voting if they're going to vote in a way that is believed to be harmful to the great Joe Biden. Again, these are all facts. Springfield's Talk 104.1. Weather in a moment. Going to continue to be a rainy day. First, the latest news. First alert forecast sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements from Color 10 Fox 49. Meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Rainy day, high of 75, 62 tonight. Sunny, 86 tomorrow. Thursday, sunny, high near 89. KSGF.com. Win tickets to not only the Ozark Empire Fair, 88th Annual, July 25th through August 3rd, but also tickets to see Everclear and special guest Marcy Playground live at the KY3 Grandstand. That's at KSGF.com. Sarah Myers.
Thank you. Another rainy day, another chance for a leaky roof. And if your roof simply just can't handle another rainy day, I want to recommend Josh and his team over at the Pyramid Roofing Company. Don't go with door knockers who will show up the next couple of days. 99% of the time, they are going to try to use scare tactics on you, and then they will try to get you to sign a contingency agreement. And once you sign that agreement, it is nearly impossible to get out of that contract. Now, the Pyramid team, they are not going to make you sign anything whenever they come out. They'll do that free roof inspection for you. They're going to be honest about the work that needs to be done. And then they will also walk through that insurance process too. And they're not going to make you sign anything during that time either. Not all roofing companies do that, by the way, but the Pyramid team, they do that step further because they do genuinely want to help you out. So if it is time to have the Pyramid Roofing Company out at your home, go ahead and give Josh and his team a call today. You can find all of that contact information under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
And also ksgf.com. If you miss any of the show, you can listen to the on-demand section of this morning show. Thus far, we have yet, and we're going to now, talk about the latest developments when it comes to good old Joe Biden and the civil war within the Democrat Party. Yesterday, Wall Street Journal had a new piece on new revelations, admissions, acknowledgments from people who, over the past not just few months, but couple of years, have noticed that Joe Biden's not all there. Senior White House advisors, according to the Wall Street Journal, for more than a year have aggressively managed Biden's schedule, his movements, his personal interactions as they sought to minimize signs of how age has taken a toll on the oldest president in U.S. history. The White House has limited Biden's daily itinerary, shielding him from impromptu exchanges. Advisors have restricted news conferences and media appearances, twice declining Super Bowl halftime interviews, an easy way to reach millions of voters, and sought to make sure meetings with donors stuck to scripted pleasantries. When the Super Bowl interview, which is a standard, it's a give me for presidents, most watched event, television in the country every year, and it's an opportunity for the president to be seen before an audience that has a mixture of political party affiliations, and it's just an absolute no-brainer. And there were a lot of people who, at the time, painted this as Biden just hating Fox News. And it was a Fox News interview, and so this is why he was not going to go on Fox News, and there was much discussion about this was the evaluation. This is what commentators who were not part of the inner circle, inner workings, talked about was going on. Some of them probably believed it, that, you know, and even conservatives, that this was his strategy. He was bitter, he was petty, and how it was wrong-headed because there were a lot of independent voters that watch Fox News, and how it was a miscalculation on his part. But what we're learning, according to the Wall Street Journal, it had nothing to do with that. It's because of his cognitive problem. That's why these handlers were canceling events like that, even what should be run-of-the-mill, easy, given interviews, that they were saying no. Even just casual meetings with people. This is over the past 2 years they've been dictating this stuff. The Wall Street Journal notes in their piece yesterday at a fundraiser in New York around the time of the United Nations General Assembly last fall, Biden seemed at a loss trying to answer simple questions about the Middle East from people in a photo line. According to a person there, an aide whispered in Biden's ear, the person said, and then the president answered. At some fundraising events, the campaign allows few impromptu moments with the president, even with top donors. The campaign has long directed donors to submit their questions for the president in advance, including at an event this year in South Florida with only 8 people attending, according to a donor. Biden spoke slowly, stumbled over words, ultimately gave detailed responses, the donor said. The president seemed to have lost a step, the donor said, but he didn't seem completely impaired. German officials, aware of Biden's fatigue at night, sought to accommodate the president by planning a June 2022 event with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz in the early evening. So this is over 2 years ago. We're not talking over 2 years ago, well, there were some signs where you were questioning. It was known well enough amongst world leaders at that point that they were setting schedules built around Biden's cognitive disabilities. The informal German event, a soiree at the Alpine resort Schloss Almo during the Group of Seven summit, was arranged as a confidential meeting on Ukraine in a relaxed setting. Biden didn't even show, surprising the chancellor and his aides, officials said. Instead, Secretary of State Antony Blinken arrived and announced that Biden had to go to bed, according to two people who were there. That was after they moved it up to accommodate him. Now, let's not forget Joe Biden claims that at every one of these events that world leaders are present, at least one pulls him aside, telling him that he has to be Donald Trump. Well, what we're learning from numerous reports by people that oftentimes go on the record, that world leaders, instead of these events, were planning the events around his sleep schedule, around his night schedule, the scenarios in which you have certain people assigned to keep an eye on him. The visual of the Italian, the newly elected Italian prime minister who, during the parachuting event, and you could see her keeping an eye on him, and then she went over and grabbed him. Apparently, according to reports, that was her assigned duty. It was her turn to watch him. It is how far we have fallen as a nation. We have gone from the leader of the free world, a country in which all other countries, even countries that had a bad taste in their mouth, would look to us to leadership, to now leaders of other countries are going through a rotation of whose turn it is to keep an eye on the president, altering meeting times to accommodate his cognitive disabilities, and everyone knows it. There's no demand for him to step down from the presidency. You have some Democrats that are pushing him to not step down from the presidency, but not run for re-election. But that's only because of their power, not the power of the United States and the world, but their power as a political party in our government over you and I, or over you and me. The decline of what we as a nation, how we're viewed, who we are, and what we accept as leadership in this country. It is such a horrendously heartbreaking thing to recognize playing out before our very eyes. You think of the difference between when many of us grew up. I think back, and I've mentioned this before. There was a multi-part documentary on Ronald Reagan that it aired on PBS. I think it was produced by PBS. It was pretty good. It's years since I've seen it. But there was one part of the documentary where they're talking about it's the Reagan-Gorbachev meetings that they're having, trying to negotiate issues of nuclear weapons. And there was I think the limo driver for Gorbachev. It was someone in that capacity. And all he knew of Ronald Reagan was just, what he would hear as a loyal member of the Soviet Party and Soviet Union, a citizen of the Soviet Union. And he talked about how, while waiting for them to finish and emerge from the facility that they were coming out of and then come down the steps, that he was crestfallen. He could physically feel himself crestfallen when he saw Reagan and Gorbachev walk out together because he said Gorbachev was this small, frail-looking, tired individual, and Reagan just was this robust person who exhibited and just exuded strength and command. And he just, everything in that one moment changed his perception of the United States and the Soviet Union and their place in the world. And we've gone from that to a president that most people believe on camera has pooped his own pants. Whom other world leaders are acknowledging that for years they've been taking turns keeping an eye on Joe Biden. That they've had to reschedule meetings to accommodate his nap times because of cognitive issues. That he, half the time, doesn't even remember people that have known him for years. How far we've fallen. How far we have allowed ourselves to fall. Now, I know many of you listening right now have fought tooth and nail to prevent us from getting to this place. But many of you listening now are fully supportive and responsible for it. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. Pyramid Roofing Company Talk and Text Line. Let's see. Trump should call for a 3 a.m. debate that could be recorded and then replay the next day. Simply say, come on, Joe, let's do it at 3 a.m. I dare you. Another. Nick, you know Trump wants to run against Biden, so you're actually working against Trump when you say things that you're saying. Trump knows he can't beat anybody else. Yeah, that's what it is. These are you just got to love how people on the left pivot without any care of how it makes them appear. How many times were we told that Biden was the one person that he couldn't beat? And now all of a sudden, you know, you've got Trump. The only reason he wants to debate Biden is because he can't beat anyone else. Okay. Incidentally, a new poll comes out that shows among Democrats by double digits, they prefer Biden over Kamala Harris. That's the latest poll. That's within the Democrat Party. She's in second place behind Joe Biden, double digits. Also in regards to working against Trump, I don't work for or against. I just talk about things that are going on, give my thoughts, and I highly doubt. Fear not. I highly doubt that anything I say, the opinions I give, are in any way, shape, or form going to alter the course of the election. Springfield's Talk 1041 traffic update. I'm Nick Reed. KSGF.com. Register to win tickets to the 88th Annual Ozark Empire Fair, July 25th through the 3rd. And in addition to that, a pair of tickets to see Everclear and Marcy Playground at the KY3 Grandstand. That performance July 25th, again at KSGF.com. First Alert Forecast, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. From Color 10 Fox 49, meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Rainy day, 75 for a high today, 62 tonight. Tomorrow, sunny, 86. Thursday, sunny, high near 89. Sarah Myers.
Thank you. Wanted to read a review for my friends down there at Quick Draw Gun in Monette. Ken wrote, Quick Draw Gun is a very nice gun shop with a big sales floor. They have great personable customer service and a great selection as well. It's true. Ken's not lying to you. If you haven't been to the shop yet, I recommend that you take a trip down there to Monette. The shop, it's pretty easy to find. It's a quick drive down there to Quick Draw, just a little under an hour. And whenever you walk into the shop, you are going to see hundreds of accessories to choose from, wall-to-wall firearms, and they also have a nice little bow selection as well. And it doesn't matter if you are a firearm expert or this is your first time ever walking into a gun shop. They are going to get on the level of expertise to help you find the right firearm for you. Now, in the meantime, before you head down there to the shop, if you are out there, you're looking for something specific, or maybe you just have questions, reach out to Brad and his team today. Now, you can find all of that contact information for Quick Draw Gun in Monette under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
Congressional Democrats are currently huddled up meeting on how to deal with Biden. I don't know what they're planning on doing if Biden says he's going to stay in. I think there's only one way the Biden family would consider stepping aside, and that is a promise of lots of money and a guarantee to be shielded from any sort of criminal prosecution connected to the bribery, all of the millions of dollars coming from China, coming from Ukraine, coming from Russia, and all of these other entities. But even that, I just don't know. I think that they're paranoid enough. They may not. I mean, would you believe, if you're a Democrat, would you believe other Democrats? You know what? You know, if you're a Democrat, you know. You know you can't trust these people. Joe Biden went on Morning Joe and Joe, yesterday morning, throwing down the gauntlet.
Remember all this talk about how I don't have the black card. Getting so frustrated by the elite. Now, I'm not talking about you guys, but about the elite in the party, who they know so much more. But if any of these guys don't think I should run against me, go ahead, announce for president. Challenge me at the convention.
So let me tell you what I really like about this. I like that I think he's serious. When somebody's running and they're way, way behind and they know, barring any sort of miracle, they're going to lose, they still talk about how they're going to win. You know, they may acknowledge, well, we've got an uphill battle here, but I believe in the voters there. And you know, it's just sort of, yeah, it's what they say when you're behind. There's standard response. I feel like Joe Biden's really like, bring it on. I'll take you on. I don't care. I'll beat you. And you can understand his perspective. When you think about the primary 4 years ago, he was considered dead in the water. He was not supposed to win. Democrats had all this new blood, all of these much younger people, you know, Kamala, a person of color. You had Pete Buttigieg, the first openly gay whatever. You had all of these DEI people that Democrats claim they're all about supporting, so it should have easily been anyone other than the old white guy getting the nomination. He was targeted as being a pro-segregationist racist by other Democrats during the debate. In his mind, he has overcome this sort of thing before. While you and I and Democrats see this in a different light, as something that is uncharted territory, what we're dealing with the senility component here, and you've got so close to the convention, and it's just variables that are brand new. To Joe Biden, he's been here and done this. To Joe Biden, he's been the target of other Democrats saying he should not get the nomination. To Joe Biden, he's beat all of that in the past. This is why he's saying, show up at the convention, take me on there. Try to disrupt it. Do whatever, I'll take you on. I don't think that he's just throwing out rhetorical bombs here. I think in his mind, this is not too much different than what he faced when he was expected to not come anywhere close to winning. I mean, you know, you got to remember when he was running, they were writing these pieces on Beto O'Rourke. He was going to be the next president, the next JFK. These people that ended up being nothing were supposed to do much better than Joe Biden was. He was the old guard that was running because he didn't have anything else better to do, and because Obama didn't back him when Hillary was running, and so he was disgruntled over that. And it was just, you know, I mean, this was not supposed to happen. He was not supposed to get that nomination, and he overcame it all, and he did it. And I think that's just what he's looking at. And I'm sure this is what Hunter's telling him. This is what Jill is telling him. They're like, you've beat these people before. These are the exact same people that 4 years ago were against you. These were the exact same people that 4 years ago said you could not do it. These were the exact same people 4 years ago that said you couldn't beat Trump. That if you got the nomination, Trump would get another 4 years. So what? They're saying it again. You proved them wrong. Guess what? During the midterms, they were getting ready at that point. I'm just telling you, this is where things were, and this is probably, I'm sure, if I'm Hunter or Jill or one of Joe Biden's close alliances. You know, I'm going to be telling him this stuff, reminding him, remember that red wave that was supposed to happen? Remember that there were Democrats, and there were some elected Democrats, members of Congress, that were already talking about that Joe Biden should potentially consider not running for re-election because they expected a red wave, and Biden was going to be responsible for that. And historically speaking, he had the most successful midterm election 2 years into a first-term presidency that any modern president has had. He outdid Clinton. He outdid Obama. Now, you and I can look at it, analyze it, talk about how, well, things were different and it was for these reasons that aren't necessarily at play right now. But to Joe Biden, that's not what's relevant. What's relevant is him against everyone else saying you can't do it. Him against his own party 4 years ago saying you can't do it. He proved him wrong. Him 2 years ago being told that essentially after this midterm election is a disaster and Republicans get control of the Senate and get a massive control of the House, or, you know, that this is going to be a landscape in which you are going to have to agree not to run for re-election. And he was right. They were wrong. And by the way, that's much of what he's preaching out there. I think he's a true believer. He's a true believer that this should be his, that it will be his, and that he can win in the general election. And all of this talk about, well, he's acknowledged to this person, he's acknowledged to that person that he may not be able to do it. I don't believe that at all. Now, it could be true, but I don't believe it is. Or I could hear him saying something like, hey, if I believed I couldn't do it, I'd step down, but I don't believe that. I think all of that is a public relations campaign trying to build momentum against Joe Biden in order to try and force him out. But increasingly, and I don't know, I'm 50-50 as to whether or not he is going to be bumped out or not on this thing. 50-50, I'm feeling more confident that he's going to stay in, or that at least he intends to stay in this thing and has no interest whatsoever in dropping out. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Battle of the Experts. Mark Penn, former Clinton pollster advisor, on whether or not Biden should stay in the fight, or whether he should be replaced.
As you know, that divided itself into and the president knows that, and he has said quite clearly, and I keep telling people this, listen to what he's saying. Or commit suicide trying to undo his nomination, because he's not going anywhere, and nobody's going to be taking the 25th Amendment, and nobody's taking him out of office. None of those things are happening.
And so he's the nominee, and I think they're making that clear. And I don't think that anyone in the party has any power to change that.
Now, of course, the question, and this is the gauntlet that Biden has thrown down, take me on if you want. Try to replace me. And Mark Penn's thoughts on that.
I think the Democratic Party would do better switching horses in midstream and seeming chaotic. I'm not sure that that's a very safe bet. They have their nominee. They've had their process. I think if he weren't the nominee, the only person who could or should be the nominee would be the vice president, because that's the constitutional order of things. And the party should, I think, live up to that. I think having a free-for-all of the convention with convention delegates, oh my God, that would be the biggest nightmare that any party could imagine.
And, the Democrat voters chose this. You chose this. Here's also something to think about for Democrat voters that want to say, well, we didn't know. You should keep that in mind when you support early voting. It's never made sense to me to vote early, because you never know what is going to happen in between the time that you voted early and the weeks prior to the actual election. And sometimes things happen in which you change your mind. That's something that the Democrats are, to some degree, going through now. Now, that was Mark Penn of the Clinton world saying, get over it, it's his. Any attempt to try to swap him out is going to be political suicide for the Democrats. Then you have former Obama advisor David Axelrod, who is on the opposite side.
It doesn't detract from his greatness or what he's done. It's just there are certain immutable facts of life, and those were painfully obvious on that debate stage. And the president just doesn't seem to he hasn't come to grips with it. He's not winning this race. He's more likely, if you just look at the data and talk to people around the country, political people around the country, it's more likely that he'll lose by a landslide than win narrowly.
Lose by a landslide. And again, though, for those, in fact, here's a Breitbart story. A group of Democrat congresspersons reportedly called for Biden to step aside during a private phone call Sunday afternoon, throwing their support behind Vice President Kamala Harris. The problem they face is the latest polling shows that Democrat voters, by double digits, prefer Biden over Kamala Harris, and she's second place compared to other names that are thrown out there. That being said, ultimately, Democrats are very obedient when it really comes down to it, and if they're told to switcheroo, you have no choice. They will fall into line. Representative Ocasio-Cortez, one of the far-left Sob Squad leaders in Congress, has announced her support for President Joe Biden yesterday. The Sob Squad apparently is going to all join forces and throw their support behind Joe Biden. So you've got these alliances being formed. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. Okay. Now, the Democrats do have some hope. They plan to seek Oprah and Taylor Swift to unify the party following the Biden debate humiliation. Amid the chaos, they're circulating a memo that would involve the president stepping down as the nominee sometime this month. with the party then announcing a blitz primary process in the day. So basically, it's just all of you who went out and campaigned for different candidates and the vote, the time and the money, we just didn't like that, so we're going to redo. These are the protectors of your vote, the protectors of democracy, constantly warning against those who would disenfranchise your vote. One of their plans is just to say, you know what, we don't like the outcome, we're just going to have a do-over. Oh. I mean, is that really that out of line with Trump calling into question the outcome of the election? Is it better or worse or the same to not necessarily call the election into question, but just say, we don't like the outcome, so we're going to just have a redo? Is that how that works? And so what they're hoping to do is get Oprah Winfrey, Taylor Swift, and perhaps Michelle Obama to participate in a series of public forums and to moderate those forums. Because, hey, when you're the party of the little people and the average American is having a very difficult time buying groceries and filling their car up with a full tank of gas, there's no better idea than to recruit some of the richest people in the entire world to be a representation of your political party. Joe Biden in Philadelphia yesterday telling people in Philadelphia that they were responsible for helping push him across the finish line when he was running for the Senate in Delaware.
Even when I was running for Senate, each time I ran, quite frankly, not a joke, Philadelphia in particular, got me across the line. No, I mean it, sir.
Okay. I'm not even sure what he was trying to get at. If you want to perhaps give him the benefit of the doubt and say, well, he was confused mixing up his Senate run for his run for the presidency. No, he said every time I ran for the Senate, it was Philadelphia that helped get me across the finish line. There was a CBS News story. This is so fantastic. In Philadelphia about his visit. And they interviewed a young black campaign volunteer at the Biden event about Joe Biden, who apparently he wasn't necessarily expected to make it to this event. And then they found out, and they were talking to Biden supporters about Biden and the potential chance that he was going to actually show up for the event.
I've always talked about how I don't have the black.
That's the wrong one. Hold on, please. Let's see. Where is the... please hold. Mike Biden. Here we go. My apologies.
For the church visit, the president made his way to a field campaign office in Manayunk, where volunteers were surprised to find out he was visiting.
Oh, is he coming here? Yeah. Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, that's cool. That's dope. I hope he's awake for it.
I hope he's awake for that. That's the way to say own a campaign volunteer. I hope he's awake for it. This is the middle of the day. And then I don't understand what the point of this is at all. This is edited, two separate remarks made, one by Karine Jean-Pierre, one by John Kirby about a press conference. Now, John Kirby, the audio of him is played second here, though, or first, but I think he actually was the second speaker. Either which way, they are talking about Biden giving a big boy speech.
After that, the president will hold a press conference. I guess a big boy press conference, what we're calling it, and take some questions from you all.
This week, President Biden will speak to national labor leaders of AFL-CIO, host the NATO summit to show the unprecedented strength of our alliance, hold a press conference, a big boy press conference, according to Justin Sink from Bloomberg.
I just don't know that, I don't know. But when you already are noted as being treated like a 5-year-old, I don't know that holding a press conference that's called a big boy press conference is the best idea. Glenn Beck's next.